Hola, beautiful humans. This is Rihanna, aka Miss Devious, and today I'm back to react for you. It looks like why the US can't solve homelessness. Bruh, this is infuriating. Mostly because in Seattle or in Washington in general, it's completely out of control. I don't know where you are or how bad it is, but feel free to comment. A lot of it is largely related to drug use, and that's my issue. I don't like that we always sweep it aside and put it in this like mental health bucket when that's not what it is. Like, yeah, anybody who's been cracked out for 8 years is going to have a little mental health problems. I'm just saying. Let's go.
The homeless crisis in America is worsening again. The COVID pandemic caused a surge in housing costs and a rise in unemployment,
Yes.
leaving nearly 600,000 Americans unhoused in 2020.
We have
crazy.
to shut down a piece of our own humanity to be able to walk past another human being that is in such difficult situation.
And being homeless.
So, before we get too far, I already have something to say about this. In Seattle, it's very common that people will walk right past people who are defecating in the streets and have a heroin needle hanging out of their arm, and they will turn and look the other way and walk right past them instead of addressing it, maybe speaking to this person, or at least acknowledging the fact that it's happening, because on some level it's enabling it to ignore it.
Walk past another human being that is in such difficult situation.
And being homeless, your days anywhere spent from where I'm going to lay my head at tonight, where I'm going to get my next bite of food from.
And what people don't typically realize when they walk past a person who's homeless is that this person is costing taxpayers a lot of money.
Billions.
Cities across America are spending more than ever to combat the crisis. In 2019, New York spent a record-breaking $3 billion to support its homeless population.
With these programs that we're spending billions, clearly the program is not working. We need a better solution, you guys. It's not working. We're just throwing money at it.
California is also expected to break its record, allocating $4.8 billion of its budget to the same issue over the next 2 years.
That's
And really
crazy.
with that just don't seem to be getting any better, despite the fact that every politician claims that this is a top priority of theirs and the budgets keep going up.
Right, but see, people don't seem to realize that it's not really a political thing. So, you know.
Overall, homelessness in America has only improved 10% compared to 2007. It's even worse for certain subgroups such as individual homelessness, which dropped only 1% in the same period. On the contrary, 2020 saw a 30% increase in
See?
the unsheltered homeless,
Crazy.
surpassing over half a decade of work since its dramatic rise in 2015.
Right now, we're trending in the wrong direction. So the state of homelessness right now is pretty tenuous, and there are some small increases that are taking place across the board.
So, how is the U.S. addressing the homeless crisis, and can it ever be solved?
Well, in order for these programs that we're dumping billions and billions of dollars into to work, the people have to want to do the program. So, like, how do you force someone to do that?
Homelessness is known to prey on some of the most vulnerable populations in America. In 2020, 20% of those who were unhoused suffered from severe mental disorders, while 16% suffered from chronic substance
That's not true. It's got to be way more than that.
abuse. In response, the U.S. has long relied on a housing-ready approach to homelessness, where those who are unhoused had to meet specific requirements such as sobriety or completion of treatment.
These are the programs I was just talking about. There's like a small sliver of these homeless cases that are maybe veterans or maybe somebody down on their luck who lost their job or families struggling in between homes or in between paychecks. Such a small percentage. And these are the people that will participate in the programs. The rest are only simply not succeeding because they do not want to participate in whatever requirements of these programs.
In order to qualify for a home. That was until this man, Dr. Sam Simbaris, pioneered the Housing First initiative.
At some point, myself and the people we were working with realized that really insisting that people change, get sober,
Right.
take medication, get your life together in order to earn or be awarded housing was not working. People couldn't. People were on the street. They couldn't stay sober. They were not interested in medication. They were interested in being somewhere safe and secure.
The Housing First initiative follows two tenets. First, the most effective solution to homelessness is permanent housing. And second, all housing for the homeless should be provided immediately, without any preconditions.
Putting people in housing first, which is what they were desperate to do, calms that survival thing, and people are safe, secure, and then they're saying to us, I need more help here, So then rather than having it us pushing or coercing people to get to treatment, people get housing and then they want treatment.
Oh, good.
Under the George W. Bush administration, the Housing First initiative gained the spotlight as the key to ending homelessness. Related programs soon received billions of dollars in support from
This B word we keep dropping.
government agencies such as the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness and the Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Housing First's rise really begins in the 90s, especially in the late 90s, and I think it really gained traction as the philosophy that should dominate those dedicated homeless services agencies and programs. And so we're in a situation now where you meet people who work at HUD on homelessness or in major agencies in California and New York. It's relatively rare to not find them be committed to housing first.
If you really look at it, this year, the federal government will give about $2.7 billion to housing and service providers and towns and cities across the country.
For decades, the Housing First policy has successfully housed individuals that need it the most.
I'd like to know, all of you out there in other countries, how do your countries or your towns compare? Are you guys experiencing an increase in homelessness or drug use? I'd like to know both, because I'm nosy.
Shannon McGee is one of them. A nonprofit organization, Pathways to Housing, helped Shannon move into his supportive housing in 2020 after staying unhoused for 4 years.
It started in 2008, losing my mom to lung cancer, and then not having a strong support system to support me throughout the process. I ended up losing the family house. They sold the family house and didn't have anywhere to go.
That's sad.
And that started the stint of being homeless. From being housed to now being unhoused, the shelter for me was very hard it was a culture shock. It was very hard to adjust to the environment.
I can't even imagine. I can't live with another person.
Standards. I finally got connected to the Veteran Affairs, and a social worker with them connected me to Pathways. And since being connected to Pathways, everything has turned around 360 degrees. I'm housed. I'm looking for gainful employment. I'm in school now, and not without having Pathways there to kind of be that support and that coach to guide me into housing, I wouldn't be where I'm at now.
A study in 2004 discovered that when individuals were provided with stable, affordable housing with services under their control, 79% remained stably housed at the end of 6 months.
I like the statistics.
Another study in 2000 found it to be more effective than traditional programs. 88% of the participants in Housing First programs remain housed. Compared to just
So my negative Nancy outlook was wrong a little, I can admit it.
47% in the city's residential treatment program. And it's not just in the United States. A similar study conducted in Canada revealed similar results, showing participants of Housing First programs obtaining and retaining housing at a much higher rate.
The evidence has shown that by getting people housed immediately and eliminating the chaos of homelessness, created a space where people would be more successful.
I don't have to be in that environment anymore where I'm subjected to using drugs or to doing things for money that I didn't want to do. I can change my focus. Is now I can say, hey, you're housed. How can we get you to your next level of finding gainful employment? What steps can we work on now?
Housing First not only supports those in need with housing, but the assistance they need to get back on their feet again.
It's housing first, not housing only. because there are
Right.
very rich services, like there's a team of people.
We have to like go in and identify exactly what combination we have to help navigate or help this person navigate through. Like, is it mental health? Is it drug use? Is it depression, a lack of motivation? Make these customized, handcrafted solutions with a partner to be accountable to make sure that they see them to the end of the process until this person can be a regained functional member of society.
Really, whether they're social workers and nurses and psychiatrists, people with lived experience, it's like a support services
Right.
team. And then the team says to you, how can I help you?
They provide wraparound support for me. So if I need assistance in getting things such as my ID or birth certificate, they help with that.
Oh,
They
good.
support me through that process. If I need to make appointments at the VA hospital, they support me through that process. Any and everything that I pretty much need done, I have support through Pathways to Housing.
Supporters of Housing First also argue that it's cost efficient. A comprehensive study in 2015 concluded that shelter and emergency department costs decreased with Housing First policies.
Nice.
People don't typically realize when they walk past a person who's homeless is that this person is costing taxpayers a lot of money. People get very sick when they're homeless. They have to be taken to the hospital. Sometimes they steal food. They have no money. They get arrested. Court costs.
We in Seattle have a program called the MID, the Metropolitan Improvement District, and they literally go around and clean up all of the unsanitary stuff that the businesses need cleaned up in order to continue conducting business. Pick up the hypodermic needles and, sort of clean up the garbage and the trash that's been thrown and strewn about the city so that we can continue living our daily lives. There's all kinds of ways that we're spending money on this that people don't even realize how much money we're dumping.
Police time, jail time. When you tally up the annual costs of people who are homeless and very vulnerable, it turns out we're actually spending sometimes $50,000 a year or $100,000 a year in some cases. And the person is still homeless.
But perhaps the biggest advantage to Housing First is the improvement in the quality of life it provides.
Being homeless and being a parent, I kind of didn't want my child to see me in that situation. So it kind of put a wedge in our relationship for a little bit. But once I got housed now, I could provide a space where we can interact together, and she wouldn't have to be subjected to that lifestyle.
Yeah, that's
Being
good.
able to have my housing first, I know that I'm in control of my environment now. What happens here is all about what I create.
But Housing First also comes with its own set of criticisms. Experts like Stephen Ide from the Manhattan Institute believe that Housing First hasn't shown any real result.
When the public is told that this particular policy is going to end homelessness, what they're expecting is that they're going to see fewer homeless people around, that homelessness numbers will significantly drop as a result of the implementation of this policy. And I don't think that we've seen that in the case of Housing First.
Critics also point out that Housing First might not be as cost-effective as it looks. Research in 2015 discovered that while permanent housing intervention was more successful in achieving housing stability, it was also more expensive than temporary housing. A 2018 survey by the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine also concluded that there is no published evidence to prove that permanent supportive housing improves health outcomes or reduces healthcare costs.
No government that I'm aware of has saved money by investing in homeless services through a Housing First approach. You can talk about potential cost offsets.
This just crossed my mind, sorry. What measures are going into preventing people from becoming homeless? Like, I guess we could bring up employment rates and wages, cost of living, housing market. Even just the eviction process is so quick, and in 30, 60, or 90 days, if this person doesn't pay the rent, there are very limited programs that will assist.
That is, if you invest $1 million in Housing First, that will trim some of the budgets and some other service systems. You're not going to actually save money, reduce the cost of government to the point where you could be talking about, let's say, a tax reduction as a result of investing in Housing First. So I think that there has been some misleading of the public with respect to that concern.
There is also the question of whether the need for housing actually triumphs over the need for treatment.
If we want more from people, we have to be talking about far more than just housing. But in the housing first era, there's a way in which housing just continues to suck all the air out of the room, and all we keep coming back to is, are we doing enough to expand the stock of subsidized housing to help the homeless?
Meanwhile, Dr. Simbaris argues that the criticisms towards Housing First are designed to blame those who are unhoused.
This person wants and prefers to live on the streets and refuses to participate in the programs, and we give them a brand new, nice, shiny house. Are they then not just going to basically take for granted and take advantage of this thing that was given?
Rather than to assist them.
They want to go back to treatment and sobriety first, and then housing maybe.
Right.
Because that changes the entire narrative back to homelessness is the fault of the individual. Anybody who fails in a capitalist society like ours, with no, taxation and no government, is only because it's their fault.
Housing First hit its first bump under the Trump administration that sought to replace it with programs focused more on treatment and sobriety.
They were talking about housing fourth as a policy.
I agree. I feel like maybe the housing and the treatment needs to go together, like cohesively at the same time.
Housing fourth, okay? And that was very deliberate because it's housing first, and they were like, no, housing fourth, treatment, sobriety, employment, and housing maybe. It was a very, very targeted attack.
The Biden administration, however, showed a return to Housing First. The American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 included 70,000 emergency housing vouchers and a staggering $350 billion in state and local fiscal recovery funds in an effort to aid homelessness and housing instability.
Right, but the regular working people can't afford gas right now.
The Biden administration absolutely supports a housing first approach. They feel that in a society as ours, that housing should be a right and not a privilege. That every
I can't agree.
American deserves a safe and stable place to call home. So they are, providing the resources and the support.
Critics of Housing First believe that lawmakers need to be giving more alternative policies a chance and approach the homeless crisis in a more structured manner.
We need to have them invest in a broad range of programs, residential programs, that can benefit the homeless population in all its variety, because the homeless population is very diverse.
Right.
Within that framework, Housing First like programs would have a place.
Right.
Low barrier programs would have a place, but they would not rule the roost in the way that they currently do.
Those in support of Housing First believe that more resources and support from the government are needed to truly end the crisis once and for all.
Well, if you don't have the resources in the program to deliver a place to live, then your listening and your promise to them is hollow. You need to have the listening, let's call that the policy, which is, housing first, person first. But then you need the resources behind the policy, apartments, subsidy, support services, in order to actually make the package viable.
And they're so diverse and complex that you can't say this one stock solution is going to work for every one of these people.
We're nowhere near where we need to be in investment, either of building public housing or affordable housing, having the capacity to address the homeless problem. We're nowhere near it.
What's important is that homelessness is a crisis that can be solved as long as there is enough attention, care, and resources to support the cause.
Well, that's wishful thinking. I like the positivity.
It's just very disgraceful that in a country that's so blessed,
right,
so wealthy,
yes,
that has done some things right in the past, if not everything, that we can't do something to fix this problem, or
like, how did we fumble the bag so bad?
At least make it smaller, ameliorate it.
Right.
So there's a lot of good work going on. So that's what gives me hope, that we can actually turn the nighttime stars into a daytime, where we just turn up the lights enough to really end it for all. Because the other thing that gives me hope is we know how to do it. We have the cure. We have good examples of how it's done. We need to take it to scale.
Why the U.S. can't solve homelessness. Again, I stopped a lot. I made some comments that I hope didn't offend anybody, but if so, I'm sorry, not sorry. Thank you so much for stopping by. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.
And maybe